Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Cyclone Hockey Show presented by Pizza Pit. We have another exciting show laid out for you guys. First, I'll give you a quick recap of the weekend as Iowa State went head-to-head with Ohio. Then we'll bring it to an exclusive interview with sophomore Anthony Song. And then we'll close out the show with special guest assistant coach Scott Isman and Iowa State Daily reporter Spencer Succo on the table for Around the League. We'll bring it to the quick recap of the weekend. Friday night and Saturday night looked like two completely different Cyclone hockey teams. Friday night, things looked a lot better for the Cyclones. Iowa State struck first with a goal by defenseman Justin Paulson. It was his first goal as a Cyclone, and Ohio had no answer throughout the rest of the first period. Ohio quickly tied the game in the second period, but Iowa State once again was able to answer back by a goal by Dylan Goggin. In the third period, Iowa State was firing shots left and right, and they had 3 goals by Azevedo, Tony Uglum, and Severson. Ohio tried to spark a comeback late in the third period, but Iowa State held them just to a power play goal, and the final score of that one ended up being 5-2. Saturday night, the luck was a little different as inconsistency and bad bounces became more of a theme and led to an Ohio domination. Coach Jason Fairman said, after the 2 goals given up in that first period, in the first couple minutes of the game, the team looked to have had more of a deflated approach to the game following. Another 2 goals were sparked by the Bobcats in that second period, and that was following a goaltender change between Moser and Gedeke. So the final score of the game Saturday night ended up being 6-1. So the Cyclones ended up splitting the series with the number 4 Bobcats. And the next time the Cyclones will be back in action will be the CSCHL Championship Tournament in Athens, Ohio, this Friday through Sunday. So we have a lot of exciting hockey coming our way, and we have a lot to talk about on the show. So we are going to take it to a quick break, and we will be back with sophomore forward and defenseman Anthony Song. Welcome back to the Cyclone Hockey Show presented by Pizza Pit. Right there you saw a promo video of the CSCHL tournament coming up this weekend in Athens, Ohio. And now joining me on the desk is Anthony Song. Thanks for joining us, Anthony.
Absolutely.
And as we talk about that CSCHL tournament, I really want to talk to you about that. And looking ahead, things are looking a little different than they were last season. You guys had a stronger finish to the end of the season for the regular season title, and now this season you guys are finding yourself in the bottom of that conference. Just kind of talk about what you're looking for heading into the tournament and if that placement is significant to you guys and your mindset heading into it.
I think that right now we're just focusing on taking it game by game. Obviously we're struggling a little right now, but as we play this tournament, hopefully we're going to do well. I think we're having a pretty good chance of winning it. But that'll bring in the confidence for nationals, which is really what counts.
Absolutely. And kind of go more in depth of how you guys are preparing. What does practice look like that's different from practices when you're just facing one opponent throughout the weekend?
I think right now the practice is just bringing the intensity. Obviously, we got to focus on teams like Ohio and how they play and their mindset. But just bringing the intensity, finishing hits in practice, just making the right plays, and I'll transition to game time.
And when you guys just are coming off of a split series with Ohio, how do you guys look forward to improving that to hopefully be able to come out on top?
Well, I think just as you mentioned before, the consistency is a real problem. But if we bring full 60-minute games both nights, then the outcome would have been different.
And now, obviously, it's hard to speak on behalf of the team because you guys are all focusing on your individual play as well as, putting in a team effort. But if you don't mind me asking, how are you individually preparing, whether that's, the mentality aspect throughout the week, what you're doing differently at practice?
I think I'm just eating healthy and staying loose. Like, that's the only way I know how to, do it. So I've been doing my entire life. It's what I'm just keep doing.
Absolutely. At this point, it comes repetitive, and it just becomes a part of the nature of hockey, so that's understandable. And at this moment in this season, you have 12 points and 5 goals. What has your role been this season? Those are similar stats to how you ended last year, but where do you find yourself on the ice? And we'll get more into how you do transition between different positions, but just about your role in general.
I think the role is just to play with other players and then try to make them better and help me get better. Score goals, obviously, as a forward right now, but I think just trying to help the team overall, whatever we need.
And I guess kind of going off of that, how I mentioned you do play several different positions between that forward and defensive position. Kind of talk about how that transition is throughout game to game and playing with different players, and your role on the ice does vary significantly.
Right. Well, I think playing both positions has helped me see the ice from both ends of the spectrum. So right now, I guess a problem is kind of just, as you said, getting to play with different players, like finding the chemistry. I've been playing pretty good with Erickson recently, so I think I'd like to continue playing with him, but just, finding the chemistry between other players that's a real tough one.
And speaking of that chemistry, last season you guys did have many different faces, and a lot of those faces were those veteran players like Chase Ray, like Ryder. So what has that transition been like with the new faces that you guys have played with? And even though you are still an underclassman, you still have experienced that transition.
Well, I think it's good that we got Ryder back because he's a really good captain, really knows how to talk to the guys, and he brings leadership. I know we got Sandy right now as assistant captain and Alcott. Those guys both bring a lot of leadership as well. So, I mean, obviously we missed the skill that Chase Ray brought, but I think that we filled it in pretty well.
Absolutely. And now going back to the season, it's reaching its end, and kind of looking back on the season overall, thinking of how things went, what the struggles were like, kind of speak on behalf of what you think some of the roadblocks were in not being able to finish, as well as you guys did finish, even though that doesn't affect your chances to go far in the tournament.
I think just this year was maybe a little rebuilding year. A lot of young guys coming in, a lot of key players leaving, so I think we've already come far enough, and we just need to find our step when it counts.
And also with the new faces, there were some new faces in management. You guys do have that new assistant coach, Mark Huber. What is his kind of feel in the locker room that is different from past?
I think that Coach Huber really replaced what we had Coach Callahan last year pretty well. Coach Callahan was a real personable guy with a lot of guys on the team, and Coach Huber, as you may know, he played here before. So he really brings back the culture, and a lot of guys actually know him pretty well through hockey. So I think that helps a lot, get comfortable.
And we did have him on the show, and we talked about how he did play under Coach Jason Fairman. Is that noticeable at all? Does that ever come up in the fact that you guys, one of your coaches was also under your current coach?
Honestly, if I would have known that, no one told me, I wouldn't have known. So that says itself.
Yeah. And now, again, putting the scope on that CSCHL tournament that's coming up this weekend, based on your knowledge of your guys' conference, what are you expecting from the competition, and more, how do you expect your team to match up with the other teams in your division?
I think that right now we just need to utilize our speed. That's how we've been able to beat good teams in our division. So as long as we keep playing our A game, I don't think there'll be any problems. We just had a couple of rough patches.
All right, well, I wish you the best of luck in that tournament this upcoming weekend. And it's another exciting postseason underway for the Cyclones. We still have a couple regular season games, but it's all going to be exciting once it's said and done. Be sure to stay tuned to the Cyclone Hockey Show presented by Pizza Pit, as next we have our Around the League segment with assistant coach Scott Ismond and Spencer Succo.
Grab yourself a beverage, a hop if you wanna just bounce to my leverage. The evidence, as they say, is in the pudding. So show me the money like my name was Cuba Gooding. It ain't fool's gold, it's gold, fool. Can't stop, won't stop, keeping it old school. So cool. Big Spoon is my nom's a plume. I keep it popping like a needle in a new balloon. And if you don't know by now, then you need more schooling. Let loose, kid, get stupid. Got more flavor than I know what to do. It's to get your hands up if you're part of the movement. And bump to the baseline. I made it rock before your phone had FaceTime. Yes, sirree, you know my steez. I stay fresh to death like I'm drowning in Febreze. Up, up, and away we go. Up, up, and it's making me glow. Up, up, and away we go. Up, up, and liking it. Up, up, and away. Up, up, and away we go. Up, up, and liking it. Up, up, and away. Let me burst on this verse. I rock steady, but I never rehearse. And every verse I work is right on the money. Yo, I got more raps than a mummy, honey. This be the boogie to jumpstart your ventricles. Strapped on the track like tentacles. I put the squeeze on these other MCs. Cutting imitators off at the knees. Oh, please. The way I'm ripping it up, I never let up. So hold on to your buzz and I'ma wake you up. Show you how it's done. I'll kick your swagger in the athletic cup, son. I'm blessed to be spitting.
Welcome back to the Cyclone Hockey Show presented by Pizza Pit. It is now time for the Around the League segment, and I am joined by assistant coach Scott Ismond and Iowa State Daily hockey reporter Spencer Succo. Thanks for joining us, guys. And now, just to start it off with a game that we talked about throughout the show already, Iowa State and Ohio went head-to-head.
As you kind of said in that first segment, it was two different Iowa State teams that we saw. And actually, kind of throughout the game, we kind of called out the goaltenders on Saturday night. Of those 6 goals, I want to say probably 5 of them were preventable by the goaltending. So it's one of those things that we thought we may have seen the Derek rise back up again and take that net. But unfortunately, we had 2 goaltending changes in that second game. And Iowa State, after getting a lot of momentum Friday, maybe arguably putting themselves in a position where they won't have to have that playing game at Nationals, kind of took the winds out of their sails there on Saturday.
Yeah, and inconsistency has really been a problem for the team all season for the most part. But still, this seemed kind of like an uncharacteristic game from both Moser and Gedeke on Saturday night. I mean, those are 2 senior guys that have had a lot of success throughout the course of their career. Moser doesn't. There was a lot of soft goals, like you mentioned. Like about 5 of them, I would say, were preventable. Maybe the first one off a deflection was maybe a little more challenging, but Moser himself told me after the game that he expects to get all 4 of those. And, you know, just the way those guys attack practice and the way those guys act, I would expect them to come out against Robert Morris maybe with a little more fire and maybe with something to prove.
And now, based on the outcome of that game, just kind of how things fell throughout the rest of the games this past weekend, Ohio earns that co-champion of the CSCHL. and Iowa State earns 4th and will have that play-in game on Friday. Kind of talk about that play-in game and how that'll affect Iowa State, because they didn't have to deal with that last season.
Right, and this is something too that you talk about how close the CSCHL is as a whole, because what it came down to was Ohio got the split by just having a regulation win. They tie Lindenwood with that, but Lindenwood then has a tiebreaker based on head-to-head. I think it was goals for. Then you've got Robert Morris, Illinois. That game went to overtime on Saturday night, and that's what made Iowa State in the 4th seed gain jumped by Illinois. So now Iowa State will have to play Robert Morris in that playing game Friday. Now, I think that there's a little bit there to be to the advantage of Iowa State, because they have had some dominance against Robert Morris in years past, and most recently sweeping them here in Ames. But I think it's one of those things that just because you have that playing game doesn't mean that you are eliminated. It's going to make it a little tougher road to get there. But at the end of the day, too, like this is Robert Morris won the CSCHL playoffs here in Ames a few years ago, having that play-in game. So it's an opportunity to take in some momentum, move forward. But it's like we've said, any team can beat any team here in the CSCHL on any given day.
Yeah, and to that, the team has a lot of confidence knowing that they have beaten every team in the CSCHL this season, and along with what you mentioned, Robert Morris winning the championship 2 years back. But what's going to be a challenge for Iowa State is ultimately going to be making that 10-hour bus ride and having to play potentially 3 games. It'll be interesting to see how the team is able to respond to, maybe having a little bit of those bus legs early on, and maybe fatigue starts to wear them down because you haven't had a 3-game series all season.
Hopefully, ideally, they won't have the bus legs because they will depart on Thursday night. Get into Ohio. I think the biggest thing for them is going to be that game day skate. Get the shakes out right away. Make that rink your own rink. And it's kind of going to be, I think that rink might benefit Iowa State, that smaller rink. But then you got to look at it too. You're going to be facing Ohio in the championship game potentially at Ohio, which Iowa State did a few years ago. Back in, I think it was 2013, if I'm correct. So it'll be interesting to see how Iowa State can make that rink their own this weekend.
Absolutely, and a lot of those little factors, a lot of the players have dealt with that their entire lives, so hopefully that won't play any factor in this upcoming tournament. And now we're going to move forward to a game that we just mentioned a couple times. Number 6 RMU was in Illinois.
We had the Friday night game there with Illinois with a 3-0 shutout, and that's one of the things with going on to the Big Pond. Illinois got the advantage right out of the gate. Saturday night, like I said, went to that overtime, and that was the difference between Iowa State having that playing game and not. But as we said, CSCHL, everything's so close, things can swing from one day to the next, and that's what's going to make this tournament so exciting.
Yeah, we talked about last week how the series kind of had split written all over it from the beginning, and it certainly lived up to that. But it's unfortunate for Iowa State that Robert Morris was able to take it to overtime, and ultimately that ended up costing Iowa State an extra game. Like you said, CSCHL, it's a tough road, no matter who you have to play. Obviously, Iowa State would have liked to have that day off, but I mean, just the reality of the league.
Absolutely. And now the outcome of that, like we kind of mentioned, Illinois earns that 3rd seed and RMU takes 5th in the CSCHL. Now moving forward to UNLV facing Midland.
Midland's a good team. This was my series of the week last week. I'm kind of surprised that they bounced back after a 5-1 loss on Friday and were able to beat UNLV in Las Vegas 7-2, because that's quite the trip out there from, I believe, like Fremont, Nebraska is where they're from.
Yeah, correct, Fremont.
Yeah, that's a long trip out to Las Vegas, especially with kind of the rowdy fan base they have out there. But, I mean, for Midland to get a split against a good UNLV team, I mean, I'm impressed, and I think that's a good barometer for Iowa State going forward in the next week after the CSCHL tournament.
Yeah, I don't think there's any way that Midland was going to win that Friday game at T-Mobile Arena.
Yeah.
Looked at, I think there's 1,800 fans, so quite a bit of fans there for an ACHA game. In an NHL arena, kind of looked like nothing, but quite the atmosphere nonetheless. And as you said, yeah, it's a big bounce back for Midland, having a 7-2 pretty decisive win there on Saturday. So Midland's got some good depth, as Iowa State saw last year. And I know we're looking at a couple of weeks for the Midland series, and the final rankings will be out here. I know, as we said before, filming on Tuesday, waiting to see what the final rankings will be here. But with that series against Midland, it won't count towards anything at the national tournament, an exhibition series of sorts. But after splitting with them last year, I expect that there's going to be a little bit of a bitter taste in their mouths, especially as Matt Gedeke lost that game in Fremont last year against his old team. you know, they're going to want to get him the win this time around. So a very strong team that's got a very similar style to UNLV, a little bit more rough and tough, but, you know, great team there that's going to be, you know, 18 going into last weekend. They'll be at the tournament, we expect, and looking to make some noise building off of last season.
And now moving forward to that in-state rivalry between number 16 Arizona and Arizona State University. On Friday, it was a 4-3 win by Arizona State in a shootout, and then on Sunday, it was a 6-1 victory in favor of Arizona.
Man, this series, I love it. I love it. You go into ASU, you see the little kitty being dangled around on a noose, and that's a rivalry that they just hate each other, and that was evident on Sunday. I don't know if anyone saw this throughout kind of ESPN and everything else on social media, but there happened to be 4 fights, I believe, in that game, including a goalie fight. So 2 teams that just absolutely hate each other. Arizona, they're looking to continue on with their ACHA National Championship hopes. It's a program that's really been rebuilding, and I think Arizona is going to be, you know, a force to be reckoned with. Not only just in this national tournament, but kind of down the stretch in the following years.
Yeah, being able to get that 6-1 win against a rival, that's got to be a huge momentum boost for them. Arizona State, they're not ranked at the moment, but they have been ranked kind of throughout the season. They're a good team. That's a good win for Arizona. And like you said, just the hatred there, the rivalry there. I mean, it's kind of fitting with the 2 split.
And I think that, I could be mistaken, but I think this is one of the first times that Arizona has won that Cactus Cup, their little rivalry trophy, in recent history, especially with that ASU team moving in the Division I ranks.
It's so cool to see that rivalry kind of develop just in the desert, kind of a non-traditional hockey hotbed, just to see that interstate rival, that hatred's still there for a sport that's maybe not traditional in that area. It's really cool to see.
Makes us think we need the Cyhawk trophy back for hockey.
Yes. And now we're going to take it to what's to come in this upcoming week. We'll start it off with the CSCHL playoffs.
Yeah, it's kind of a quiet weekend all around. You see a lot of teams trying to gear up and getting ready for that national tournament here this weekend, and next weekend will be a little bit of fine-tuning and rest for teams. A couple big playoff series here, obviously CSCHL, where you've got 5 teams that are all going to be ranked in the top 15 here when this rankings come out. And very close to all being in the top 10 as well, too. So it's going to be, it's always an electric atmosphere there in Bird Arena, and you can bet that if Ohio's in that final game, it is going to be a sellout. It's going to be packed. They do a great job there. It's going to be a long road up to that game on Sunday. Real demand of all the teams. And as we can see, you know, whether it be Ohio, Iowa State, Illinois, you've got to put together 3 good games here to win that championship. There's no day off for anybody.
And to that, like you said, these teams are just so close to each other that it's really hard to pick a favorite, but it's hard not to kind of think of Ohio as kind of the favorite as co-champions, and then just the fact that they're so far out of the way for the rest of the CSCHL. That's a long bus ride for Iowa State. It's a long bus ride for Lindenwood, even for Robert Morris and for Illinois, having to go to a tough environment like Ohio and play a really good team. Obviously, it's going to be tough to play Ohio in Bird Arena. It already is, but especially in a playoff atmosphere like that. But like we've said throughout the show, like anyone can beat anyone in this league. So we shouldn't really be surprised at any result.
I guess my question here on this is there an advantage to not winning the CSCHL playoffs? Because in recent history, we've kind of seen a curse over the CSCHL playoff champion. There's been a CSCHL team in the championship game of the national tournament, but has not been the team that has won the playoffs. So do you almost want to take avoid the penalty?
It's just a result of the teams just beating up on each other, I think. Like that third game, like with Robert Morris, they made it to the Elite Eight that year. But it's just such a gauntlet all season with these teams, and it's intensified even further during the tournament. So there could be something to that, but obviously I think that
you want the ring.
You're on.
Absolutely. And now moving forward to the ESCHL playoffs between Liberty, Stony Brook, and NYU.
Yeah, you've got a bunch of teams that are out in that area. Those are they're the 3 major teams in that area.
I think you could throw Rhode Island in there as well.
Yeah, Rhode Island has been making some noise as well too. But those are your 3 really main teams that you're starting to see make noise on that east side. So it'll be an interesting weekend. I mean, you got some top-ranked teams there. I couldn't really tell you who's going to come out of that. I'm guessing maybe a Stony Brook with how strong they've been. But Liberty's been pretty strong as well too. I think Stony Brook won the regular season there, so it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, Liberty had that long winning streak throughout the season. NYU's come on since the semester break. It'll be really interesting to watch. I think this is definitely one of the better leagues in the ACHA. Maybe not up to the Western Collegiate Hockey League, maybe not up to the CSCHL, but these are some really good teams. It'll be interesting to watch Liberty. It'll be interesting to watch Stony Brook, NYU, Rhode Island. I think all 4 of those teams have a real chance at winning it.
And now we're going to close out the show with your guys' picks for the weekend on games to watch. We'll start it off with you, Scott.
Well, we're looking at 2 teams that we just talked about, UNLV and Arizona. I think this could develop to be a rivalry eventually. I'd actually really like to see UNLV, which is an independent team right now, try and get in that Western States Conference. You've got a team that last weekend was ranked 16 in Arizona and 12 in UNLV. UNLV, brand new program, Arizona rebuilding. I think this is going to be a little bit of a bloodbath, and unfortunately, it does not count for that final rankings. But I think it's going to be really great. Yeah, really
major
great.
pride on the line.
Yeah, absolutely. Really great weekend to watch.
And now you, Spencer.
And my pick was going to be Minot State and Jamestown. I mean, like you said, there's not a lot of real series going on this weekend. It's a lot of tournament play, a lot of teams resting up. But I really like this pick. I could have gone with Villanova Temple, kind of like a crosstown Philadelphia rivalry, but I'll stick with the interstate rivalry, Minot State and Jamestown. Minot State has only 2 regulation losses on the year. One of those came to Jamestown. These 2 teams play each other quite a bit. I think this is going to be their 7th and 8th time playing this season. But Jamestown's a really good team. They've proven that they can hang tough with teams like Midland. They've proven they can beat teams like Minot State. I think this will be an interesting series. I think Jamestown can potentially maybe split a series here before tournament play.
All right, well, you can catch all of the outcomes of the games we just talked about in next week's Cyclone Hockey Show presented by Pizza Pit. That's it for this episode. You can tune in every Tuesday starting at 7.